Hey guys, how's it going? It's me, Yoko, from Japan with my husband.
Hi, I'm Hidetoshi Ishii, Vice President of Free Indo-Pacific Alliance.
Today's guest is somebody from Cambodia living in Morocco right now. Now, when I say Cambodia, maybe some of you are not very familiar with the country, or maybe you don't hear much about the country, but it's actually a very, very significant country for you and us. What I mean is, for example, the issues in the South China Sea by Communist China. There are military operations by Communist China, CCP, all the time, and Vietnam, Philippines, and others are always criticizing such operations by China. However, Cambodia, under Hun Sen's dictatorship, is such a puppet in ASEAN of CCP. And so every time ASEAN countries try to decide that they criticize CCP, every time Cambodia gets in the way to oppose to that action. And so what's important is that what it means to fight against the Hun Sen regime in Cambodia equals to fighting against the dictatorship by CCP. And today's guest is Ms. Sochua. She's the vice president of the biggest opposition party in Cambodia, named Cambodia National Rescue Party. And this opposition party actually almost won the election back in 2018, because the polls in the previous year showed that they were going to win. And Hun Sen felt threatened, and he arrested the party leader and then dissolved the party in such a forced way. And the top people of the party and others, they spread to the world in exile. And today's guest is one of those people. And she is one of the important leaders of Cambodia. So now I hope you get the big picture. So let's dive in. So today we are with Ms. Sochua. Where?
Morocco.
Morocco.
Yes, I am in Morocco, and you might wonder why I am in Morocco. Because I'm not from Morocco.
You're from Cambodia.
I'm from Cambodia, and I have been in exile since 2017 after my party, the Cambodia National Rescue Party, the only opposition party in Cambodia, was unconstitutionally dissolved by the Hun Sen government. So I was forced to live in exile, to leave Cambodia, now living in exile for almost 3 years.
Wow.
Many of the leaders in the opposition in Cambodia are either in prison under house arrest, like our president, Mr. Char, or in exile like Mr. Samlansi and myself. So I am in Morocco with my family, but I have to leave here soon because my 3-month visa will be up. But however, Morocco now has been under lockdown. Yes, I think this is the 6th week. 4 more weeks to go. I can't go anywhere.
Where is your leader Samlansi now? In France?
In France?
Mr. Samlansi, the acting president of the Cambodia National Rescue Party, the CNRP, is also in exile in Paris, in France.
Is he safe now?
Yes, we are all safe. As you know, Europe is very badly hit by the coronavirus. Also under lockdown. We are all safe. However, our minds and our hearts and our thoughts are with the people around the world where the coronavirus has hit much, much harder. We are very concerned, especially with the people most at risk, the women, the elderly, the disabled, the migrant workers, people who are living under poverty line all over the world, and in particular, of course, in Cambodia.
So allegedly, Hun Sen government has announced that the number of infected people in Cambodia is 122, and the number of death is on like 0. And what's your thought on that?
Even today, this is the third week, 20 days consecutively that Cambodia has had 0 infected cases, 0.
Oh.
As you said. So in total, 122 affected, but 120, I believe, have recovered. Only 2 now are still under treatment from coronavirus. Why is the number so low? Although we welcome that number that it is low. Yes, if it is true, we are fortunate in Cambodia compared to neighboring countries. It is low maybe because of the weather, but mainly because there has been very, very low testing. And we have been asking for the government of Cambodia to test the people most at risk, mainly the people who work, the factory workers. There are 800,000 factory workers. They not only work in very small areas, but they're all packed when they travel to go to work and from work back home. On a bus, there can be up to 40, 50 workers on the bus, all packed together like animals. And then when they get off the bus, then they go straight into the factories where they work without any social distancing. And when they eat together. And the factories do not provide meals. The workers during lunchtime come out to buy from the street vendors on the street, and it's all very packed on the street. And the hygiene, sanitation, the conditions are very, very bad. And the workers live in small rooms so that they can afford to pay the rooms. So a small room could be for 4 to 5 workers sharing the same room, sharing toilets, sharing living quarters that are not safe, that are not hygienic, lacking sanitation. So, and then there's no testing at work. It's just testing for just measuring the temperature, but that's not enough. And there are other the migrant workers who have come back from Thailand because Thailand now has closed its borders to Cambodia and to neighboring countries to the world. I think Cambodian migrant workers in Thailand have come back, crossing the border, taking risk, about 100,000 of them. When they come, in the beginning, they were not even testing for the temperature, let alone testing for the virus. So you're talking about hundreds and thousands of people who should be tested. And these are factory workers, migrant workers, who have in the past 20 years supported the economy of Cambodia. As you know, exports of garments, of shoes made by the workers in the factories, exported to the European market, to Japan, to USA, to Canada, everywhere. Garment factories make up to 80% of Cambodia's export. And Cambodia, until the virus, the pandemic, have lived, the economy has been supported by tourism and the garment sector and the construction and farming, agriculture. So the workers are the ones who are the backbone of the economy in Cambodia. So they should be protected, they should be tested, they should be provided with hygienic condition, living condition, and working conditions, and they are not. And I think that is one of the reasons why Cambodia is testing very low in terms of infection.
From what we keep hearing from the media, Hun Sen is prioritizing the loyalty to Communist China than the health of Cambodian people. And the great example of that was something that happened on January 30th,
yes.
I believe. So there are lots of Cambodian people that were living in Wuhan area, and there were lots of exchange students, diplomats, business people, and so on. However, Prime Minister Hun Sen said that it's
Don't come back Cambodia.
yeah, he
Stay
said
in Wuhan.
cooperate with Chinese people and stay there and so on. And we believe that that is very outrageous. And what's your take on that?
The world knows that in January, early January, late January, Wuhan became a name that the whole world knew because of the pandemic, because of the numbers of affected, even deaths of people who are affected by the coronavirus. So there are a few hundred Cambodian students in Wuhan who then at that time were begging Mr. Hun Sen to bring them home. That Mr. Hun Sen's response at that time was, no, you cannot come home. Why? Because our friend, China is our friend. Our friend is facing a tremendous hardship. Therefore, to show that we are true friends of China, you must stay in Wuhan. And then the students have continued to beg, send messages through Facebook. Their parents are also begging for the government of Mr. Hun Sen to bring them home. And Mr. Hun Sen kept saying, no, you cannot come home because our friend China is in trouble. Therefore, we must stay with China. Not only that, and he went to Beijing to see.
He did.
Yes, he went to Beijing in February with his son to show solidarity to President Xi Jinping, as if it was not enough to discourage our people from feeling secure. He went in the middle of the pandemic, at the peak of the pandemic, he went to Beijing to shake hands with Mr. Xi Jinping. This is saying, and then Mr. Hun Sen said in one of his 2, 3, 4, 5 hour speeches saying that coronavirus will not come to Cambodia until February 31st. February 31st, meaning coronavirus will never hit Cambodia. So now Mr. Hun Sen has a new nickname. We call him Mr. February 31st.
Wow.
And then on top of that, to show that Cambodia is solidly led, he is not going to let coronavirus come to Cambodia. He welcomed a cruise ship of over 2,000 passengers. The cruise ship that was rejected by about 4 or 5 countries to dock. Mr. Hun Sen on February 14 welcomed the ship to Cambodia. Not only that, he went just to show that he has a good heart. He went to and welcomed personally with these passengers with roses because it was Valentine's Day, and to show that he has a human heart. He's a leader with a human heart. And now he twitched it all around. Now every day the Ministry of Health in Cambodia, Mr. Hun Sen, saying to the public, saying to the people of Cambodia, the most dangerous risk the deadly virus COVID-19 is in Cambodia.
Oh,
Not
it is.
only that, yes, in Cambodia. Not only that, he has pushed for the adoption of a state emergency law.
Oh, yes.
Yes, the state of emergency law in Cambodia was adopted on the 29th of April, just recently.
Mm.
They totally alarmed the population, the people. State of emergency. If the cases, affected cases, deaths from coronavirus has been 000, why do we need a state of emergency law? Not only that, Mr. Hun Sen pushed this law through, threatening journalists, threatening people who are critical on Facebook. Actually, a number of people, including members of the opposition party, are now in pre-trial detention, in jail for being critical of Mr. Hun Sen's measures, lack of measures against coronavirus. Now you see Mr. Hun Sen with his state of emergency law, and he can put anybody in jail. If you are critical about how he handles COVID-19, you are in jail. The most unacceptable action taken by Mr. Hun Sen was that during one of his 4 or 5 hour press conference, he said to motor taxi drivers, these are people who have very hard time making ends meet every day. They make maybe $5 or $10 a day driving motor taxi all over Cambodia, called the motor dup, and one of the reporters asked Mr. Hun Sen, the motor dup drivers are now facing a big economic crisis because there are no passengers. They can't make money. They're going bankrupt. Mr. Hun Sen's reply at that time was, well, sell your motor taxis. Go buy ride. If you go bankrupt, don't come to me. So he was saying that at a press conference. And one of the reporters who Facebook Live, he quoted Mr. Hun Sen word by word. He is now in jail.
Just by quoting Prime
Just
Minister.
by quoting, yes, because that is interpreted by authorities as inciting violence, inciting social disorder. From this reporter who was quoting Mr. Hun Sen.
So Prime Minister Hun Sen strengthened his power over Cambodian people, and Cambodia is having such a hard time right now, and we were wondering what you guys will be doing from now on as the opposition party. There was a plan last year to everyone go back to Cambodia, which unfortunately didn't work out. But right now, with the under the circumstances, what are you guys going to do?
We have made 3 recommendations as measures to combat coronavirus, specifically talking about migrant workers, factory workers, and the most at-risk population. First, we must test, provide testing free of charge to our factory workers, to our migrant workers, to the people most at risk, in order to stop infection and the spread of the virus. And these people will not be tested because they have no means, but they continue to economically support the country.
Yes.
So in terms of healthcare, we are asking for the Ministry of Labor to control the transportation of the factory workers that go to work every day and come home from work every day, so that they are safe. There is social distancing We are not saying close down the factories. We are saying make the workers live and work safely. Yeah. Number two, in terms of economic survival, we are asking that the government, the brands, the employers, in this case, the factory owners, put together the $190, which is the minimum wage in Cambodia for factory workers. Don't take away their income from many of the work of the factories now have suspended the production because there is not enough supplies coming from China, the raw materials, or the orders that have been put by the big brands have not been picked up because the market outside of Cambodia, the markets for these garments are now closed. European market, US markets, all are closed because there's no demand. But these brands have not fulfilled their requirements, which is to buy from the factories who have already made the orders, right? And so these factories are forced to suspend work or to close down. So the first people to be affected by the closure, either temporarily or for good, are the factory workers. That means they lose their jobs. That means they lose their income. So Mr. Hun Sen has said, okay, we will pay you, the government will pay $40 and the factories will pay $30, which is $70. From $190 to $70. Even at $190 a day, a month, the workers would barely survive because with $190, they have to pay for their own food, their own transportation, their rent, utilities, electricity, water, plus supporting their families, plus paying for the loans, the debts of their parents and of themselves. So our recommendation is that don't cut. Please use the economic stimulus package from the national budget, plus the support, the aid from donor countries. European Union have said that they will they will switch assistance from development to COVID-19 for Cambodia and for countries around the world. So which is worth about close to $60 million. So with the $60 million, you can provide income, proper income for the workers so that they are not, even if they cannot go to work, they have to support themselves. They have to support the local economy. If the workers have no money, all the vendors, the people who make money from the workers, sell things to the workers, sell food to the workers, all that will also stop. That will affect 3 million people.
Yes.
So we are saying keep the money, keep the income of the workers coming. Workers must receive from the government. I think that's the solution for in Japan as well, right? Or in other countries. Keep the economy going. Don't stop this. Although the factories are closed, but give them support the workers. Plus, utilities, meaning electricity, cost of electricity, water, should be paid by the government. The rent of the rooms should be paid by either the factories, the brands, or by the government. It can be done. The factories, the brands, the big brands have benefited from the workers for many, many years. We are talking about billion-dollar industry. We're not talking about small enterprises. We're talking about very huge billion-dollar sector, right?
Yes.
So the brands must contribute to that, and they have plenty of money for that. On top of that, we are saying to Mr. Hun Sen for the loans. You know that 2.5 million Cambodians have received loans from the microfinance institutions. Loan, an average Cambodian owes about $4,000, which is a year income for an average Cambodian, especially farmers. They, in total, microfinance institutions have about $10 billion. It's $1 billion business sector as well, on loans that are provided by to the borrowers. We are saying to spend for at least 3 to 6 months. They should not be, the borrowers should not be forced to make payments or to pay interest. Otherwise, the economy in the sector, which is the agriculture sector, will also be affected because most of them are farmers. The micro, small, medium-sized businesses are hit very badly in Cambodia. So these the measures that we have proposed to Mr. Hun Sen, it is feasible. It needs to have a leadership with vision, commitment to the human rights, to the economy, the local economy. You have supported the big businesses for a long, long time. Now you have to see that without the local economy, you cannot. Cambodia will, the millions of people in Cambodia will be affected, economically speaking. And now, because there has not been any affected cases for the past almost 3 weeks, people are going back to work, going back to their small businesses, but still facing a lot of risk because there's no social distancing. People have to wear their own mask, buy their own mask. The government so far have not provided any economic measures except for the workers $40. But for the rest of the population, most at risk, they are on their own. So we are saying, we are recommending, and we are making it very a clear policy from the opposition that supporting the health of the workers, supporting the economic livelihood of the small and medium-sized businesses is essential. Keep the worker at work is essential. And not only that, the loans cannot be paid. And it is not just suggesting to the microfinance institutions not to make the borrowers pay, but the government has to provide that money from the national budget to the microfinancial institutions so that they also can keep the economy going. So, but at the end of the day, the leadership has to come from the government, from Mr. Hun Sen. He has to show that he has a vision. He has to show that he's a leader at this moment when leaders around the world are calling for support of the people, for calling for everybody to come together to face the pandemic together. Mr. Hun Sen is to the country, is forcing people, is threatening people, is showing a government that is even more fearful, that a government that is more oppressive with the state of emergency law.
So this will be our final question of this interview. So our audience consists of both Japanese people that understand English and also people, those native English speakers such as Americans or British people and so on. And we'd like you to make a brief comment on to give to our audience as a final message.
Together, we must think of measures to survive during this time. COVID-19 is affecting every single one of us today. However, COVID-19 should be a lesson learned for all of us, how we live, what we used to depend on in our life. Should we buy more? Should we buy less? How do we use, how do we buy cheap clothing? Or do we look at not just how we look and we want the cheapest clothes, the cheapest pair of jeans? Think about the workers who must work. And we must force, this is for a lesson learned, we must force the big brands to comply with their social responsibility toward their workers. That's as far as we as consumers are concerned. However, we as the people of a country, we must be clear that at the end of the day, the taxes, money, the money that we pay on taxes, it's money that we have the right to ask for in time of crisis. It's not up to the politicians to say how much should be spent on what. Is our money, especially in time of crisis like this. In the future, for Cambodia, for a country like Cambodia, we cannot continue to depend on international investment. The investment should be on the investment on education of our children, of our youth, so that they don't continue to, their future is what? Migrant workers? Factory workers? No. The future of our children, when they grow up, they should be independent workers. They should be lawyers. They should be doctors. They should be engineers, teachers with skills, but not low skilled, no skilled labor that can be bought so cheaply or exported to other countries. No. Each government and we as the people must demand, therefore choose the leaders, choose our members of parliament who or can say what have they learned from COVID-19. What's their policy? Each political party, what's your policy for the future post COVID-19? And we look up to Japan to continue to be the world leader. And Japan at this moment should be forceful in promoting human rights, in giving a global message that Japan is for the people, working. Japan is doing a good job, but on the global level, Japan needs to show picture and image of a country that support human rights and true democracy, and not be complacent and not always do behind the scene diplomacy. Sometimes you have to be forceful, especially defending human rights.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that's the end of this interview. What did you guys think? There are actually more and more issues regarding Cambodia because the Hun Sen regime is a puppet of China. For example, there are issues such as the Chinese Navy is now building a military base in Cambodia right now, and there are issues like that that has a lot to do with the South China Sea and all kinds of like national security level problems. And we want to cover more and more. So if you want to hear more, please support us on our Patreon. Freedom Intelligence Network now has a Patreon page, so please support us there. So thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, take care, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye.
Bye.